Jace was never meant to find anything alive on that dead warship. It had drifted in the black for years, its hull torn open like a wound, and every sensor said no life signs. But salvage law was clear: if you could reach it, you could claim it, and so he moved through narrow halls filled with frozen air and the quiet whisper of lost battles. He was a simple human salvage tech working the outer ring alone for weeks. His small ship, a rust-colored tug with mismatched thrusters, and a cargo bay half full of scrap. But inside that derelict he found something that changed the direction of his life forever. The med bay was sealed tight behind ancient bulkhead doors. Jace thought it might hold rare tech or a reactor core, so he forced the hatch open. The stale air rushed out and lights flickered on dim and blue. In the center of the room was a healing pod still working weakly, and inside it lay someone tall, armored and breathing. He blinked, thinking it was a corpse revived by his entry, but then the pod glass slid open and a wave of warm mist rolled over him. A figure rose from within pale skin like molten silver hair, damp and braided down a long back, and eyes that glowed with a strange, deep gold. She looked at him with the kind of fury that melts courage, because he realized too late that she was unclothed and conscious. Her voice hit him like thunder, speaking a language he half understood from translation. Chips, she called him violator, defiler, and enemy. Then she froze, staring at his face. Her expression changed from rage to shock, then to something that looked like terror. She said one sentence that the translator caught perfectly. "You have seen me without right. Now you must bond with me, or they will kill us both." Jace did not understand. He tried to explain he was human, a scavenger, not a threat, but she stepped back, trembling between pride and despair. She told him her name, Kara of the Thurn Dominion, warrior commander of the 5th Fleet, last survivor of this wreck, and by her people's sacred code, anyone who saw a warrior unclothed outside of ritual must either die or bond as mate. Jace thought it was madness. But before he could argue, the room shook. The derelict was being pulled by tractor beams. Kara's people had come for her. The Thurn ships filled the void outside, massive curved hulls gleaming bronze in the starlight. Their voices filled the comms, demanding to know who was with their commander. When Jace answered, a dozen weapons locked on his tug. Kara grabbed his arm and said, "No one must know you saw me like this. They will kill you to erase the shame, and me with you, unless we perform the rite at once." Jace wanted to run, but something in her eyes held him, that desperate honor, that unbreakable sense of law. Moments later, armed Thurn soldiers stormed the med bay. Tall, scaled beings with crested helmets and shining spears. They bowed to Kara, but glared at Jace with hatred. The eldest of them declared by witness law, "This human must die for violation of sacred privacy, unless the commander herself claims him as bonded partner by right." Kara stood silent for a long moment, then lifted her chin and said, "I claim him." The soldiers murmured in disbelief. The elder warned her that such a bond would disgrace her house. She said, "Better disgrace than slaughter," and took Jace's hand. Her palm was hot, her claws digging gently into his skin. They brought them aboard the flagship under guard, and Jace saw 1,000 eyes staring at him, every Thurn whispering about the soft human who forced a commander into marriage. Kara ignored them. She led him into a chamber glowing with blue light, where a priest prepared the bonding seal. He spoke in harsh syllables and mixed their blood on a crystal plate. The liquid hissed and formed a small living mark on their wrists, linking pulse to pulse. Jace felt a strange warmth spread through him, like a heartbeat that was not his own. The priest announced the bond provisional, until formal vows could be witnessed before council. But enough to stay execution. Just as the ceremony ended, the ship shook again. Alarms howled. Pirates had followed Jace's tug through the drift. They were attacking the Thurn fleet with plasma torpedoes. The priest fled the chamber, and Kara turned to Jace with eyes bright as burning gold. She said, "Now you fight beside me, bonded. You will share my danger." Jace barely had time to grab his gear before the wall split open and decompression roared. Kara pushed him into an escape pod and leapt in after him, sealing it. Shut the pod shot away from the burning warship, tumbling through debris and fire as they drifted clear. Kara stared out the viewport, watching her people's ships vanish into the storm of battle. She whispered a vow in her own tongue, a sound like wind and thunder, and said to Jace, "This bond is not done until we live or die together." Jace felt the pulse of their new mark beat in rhythm, and realized that whatever had started as an accident was now written into the law of a warrior civilization. They were married by fire and fate, and there was no turning back. He looked at her and saw not a stranger anymore, but someone bound to him by survival and honor, the first human ever tied to a Thurn by law and blood. The pod sensors picked up more pirate signals closing fast, and Kara met his eyes and said, "We run now." Husband and Jace, for the first time in his life, felt both terror and strange pride. As the escape pod drifted through fields of burning metal and shattered engines, the light of the battle faded behind them, and Jace worked fast to reroute power from the emergency systems. He had done this 100 times with broken machines, but never with a living alien warrior sitting beside him covered in ash and blood and pride. Kara stayed quiet, her golden eyes fixed on the stars, her breath steady, even as pain flickered across her face. The bonding mark on both their wrists glowed, faintly like twin embers, and he could feel it pulse every time her heart beat inside her chest. He tried not to think about the strange connection that joined them now. They reached his small tug hidden beyond a ring of debris, and Jace docked the pod manually. The tug was ugly, patched together from old cargo hulls and engine scraps, but it was alive and loyal, and Kara looked around in disbelief as they stepped inside. She said, "It smells of oil and smoke and courage," and that made Jace laugh. For the first time since everything had gone mad, he sealed the airlock and set the engines for a deep drift jump. They would ride the current between stars until the pursuers lost track, but he knew pirates had sharp sensors, and he would need to be clever. Kara removed what remained of her armor and sat near the reactor heat. She looked smaller without the plates, but more dangerous, like a weapon stripped to its edge. She said, "The bond we made is real in the eyes of my people, but not yet. Legal until it is recorded by a council. We must reach neutral space before the hardliners send word ahead to void it." Jace asked why it mattered if they survived the pirates, and she told him that without registration, her enemies could claim she was unbound and dishonored, and any one of them could challenge her for command. He saw the pain behind her words, the betrayal of her own kind, and the heavy chains of law that made every choice deadly. They jumped into drift space, a shimmering corridor of warped light and gravity where time stretched thin like fabric. Jace guided the ship using old human math and gut feeling, while Kara adjusted power flow with instinct learned in war. Together they kept the tug alive in that storm of physics. Jace watched her move graceful even when exhausted, and she watched him too, noting how human hands that seemed clumsy could dance across controls with precision. She asked him once how humans survived with so few rules, and he said sometimes no, rule is the only rule that saves you. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded as if understanding something that would take years to explain. A warning tone cut through their fragile calm. Pirates had found their trail again. The sensors flashed, red as 3 small craft dropped from drift just behind them. Kara grabbed the weapons panel and her voice became command again. She ordered power to shields and charged the pulse cannons while Jace angled the tug into an asteroid field. The ship shook under impact as rocks scraped the hull. She fired short bursts of plasma that lit the dark with fire, and one pirate ship exploded in a silent bloom. Jace's heart hammered, but his mind stayed cold. He used the debris itself as cover spinning, the tug through tight gaps that would crush anything bigger. Kara laughed fierce and wild, saying, "No one flies like this, even our best pilots," he said. "Maybe your best pilots never had to fix their own engines. They destroyed the second pursuer with a timed detonation." Jace vented fuel to fake a reactor breach, and when the pirate came close, he reignited it in a flash of plasma that tore the craft apart. The third one broke off and ran, and Kara stood behind his seat, her hand on his shoulder, the mark on her wrist pulsing brighter. She said, "This bond of ours might not be cursed after all," he said. "Maybe it is just unlucky." And she smiled, the kind of smile that meant respect and something deeper. When the battle ended, they drifted again. In silence, Kara told him stories of her people's past, how the Thurn once believed the stars were living ancestors, and how every warrior carried a vow to bring honor back to the light. She said their laws were old, older than the machines that carried them through space, and sometimes those laws broke hearts before they protected souls. Jace listened quietly and said, "Humans are not much different. We make laws to feel safe even when the universe does not care." Kara looked at him and said, Perhaps we were meant to meet in this wreck of fate. They reached the edge of neutral space after 2 long jumps. The navigation beacons glowed faint blue, marking the territory of the free station called Verith Port, a place where humans and aliens traded without war or rule. Kara said they must find the magistrate there to confirm the marriage, otherwise her clan would declare it false. Jace agreed, though part of him still wanted to think this was temporary. He had not planned to be anyone's husband, least of all to a warrior bound by ancient custom. But each time he looked at her, he felt something change. Something fierce and quiet, like respect becoming trust. As they prepared to dock, a transmission arrived from the Port Authority demanding identification. Kara started to respond, but the screen flickered and a new voice came through, cold and cruel. It was a Thurn male wearing the mark of her clan's council. He said, "Kara of the 5th Fleet, you are ordered to surrender yourself to judgment for violation of sacred law and bring the human violator for execution." Kara's jaw tightened. She said, "This cannot be. They should not know yet." The voice laughed and said, "Your rival has already informed us. Your bond is invalid. We will cleanse this shame before the next dawn." Jace saw the fear flash in her golden eyes just for a heartbeat before she hid it behind command. He said, "What do we do?" She said, "We run and fight again, husband. And this time we make the bond real before anyone can take it from us." The alarms began to wail. The port's defense drones turned hostile, and Kara grabbed her spear rifle and said, "Together. Now, Jace, together until they believe." The tug roared into motion again. Engines, screaming light bending around them as they raced toward the one place where both love and law would decide if 2 different souls could survive as one. The tug drifted through the void like a wounded animal. The stars stretched into long streaks of color as they entered the illegal drift lanes, places where gravity twisted and relics of ancient battles floated endlessly. Jace guided the ship with careful hands, his fingers moving across the worn controls as if he could coax life from the metal. Kara sat beside him, her golden eyes scanning the dark for threats. She had learned to read the patterns of drift storms and broken hulls, and now she trusted his human instincts as much as her own senses. The tug shuddered as a grav echo ripped through the hull, and Jace adjusted the thrusters in perfect rhythm, avoiding a spinning wreck that could have torn them apart. Kara leaned forward, gripping the rail inside the cockpit, and whispered under her breath, prayers to ancestors, long dead, asking them to watch the human. She had claimed. For hours they moved through fields of twisted metal and ghost ships. Sometimes they had to hide inside the shadows of derelict war cruisers, letting bigger scavengers pass them by. Jace marveled. At Kara's strength, she climbed into the maintenance access panels while the ship shook and hot sparks rained down. She patched conduits and replaced vent valves faster than he thought possible, her hands a blur over alien components while he held her steady and watched her move like a predator born to survive. He began to feel something he had never felt before. The pulse of her bond against his own, a quiet rhythm that matched his heartbeat, as if the universe itself recognized they were now linked for better or worse. They shared small things in the silence between the grav echoes. Jace offered rationed water, and Kara accepted it with a nod. She spoke slowly about her childhood in the 5th Fleet, the rigorous training, the endless drills, and the harsh lessons of honor and survival. He told her about Earth, the deserts and oceans he had crossed and the ships he had salvaged, and for a moment, the vast distance between their worlds felt smaller, as if stories and survival could bridge galaxies. Kara laughed once at a clumsy tale of his first human ship crashing into a frozen moon, and Jace smiled because even under the threat of death, she allowed herself a small spark of amusement. Then the message came from Kara's younger sibling, a coded signal that blinked across the tug's comms. He opened it, and the translation was clear. The hardliners had bribed a neutral magistrate at Verith Port to void the bond on arrival. They would declare it illegal and arrest her immediately unless they found a way to prove the rite had been completed in true danger. The words hit them both like ice. Jace tightened his hands on the controls, and Kara's jaw set. She said, "Then we have no time. We cannot drift leisurely. To court we must arrive as if we belong to no one, and yet every step we take will be watched." A shadow moved past the viewport, and Jace swerved the tug through a narrow gap between 2 massive derelict cruisers. Kara fired a short pulse from a shoulder cannon at a drone that had picked up their heat signature, and it exploded against a wreck with a flare that lit the interior of the tug with orange light. She grinned and said, "Human courage is strange but useful." He said, "Your aim is perfect." For a warrior, her laugh was low and dangerous in the confined cockpit. The bond pulse between them flared like a warning and a promise at once. They knew the next obstacle would not be a physical one but a test of trust as drift currents twisted. Unpredictably, Jace relied on his instincts and Kara on her knowledge of the old laws, and together they moved as one through the shifting corridors of dead ships and gravity rifts. Hours became days, and the tug was battered by microstorms and magnetic eddies. They slept in shifts. Jace at the controls, Kara in a crouched position, monitoring sensors and engines, sometimes talking in whispers about nothing in particular, just to remind themselves they were alive. And together, Jace noticed how small gestures mattered, a hand on a panel to steady the other, a quiet word before a dangerous maneuver. Kara saw how he adapted human problem-solving to alien technology, and she felt respect growing into something more raw and urgent. The bond was no longer just ritual. It became a living presence between them. Finally, the tug approached the outskirts of Verith port. The neutral station glimmered like a jewel among the drifting wreckage. The lights promised safety but also scrutiny. Jace aligned the ship for docking, and Kara's hand rested briefly on his arm, the mark pulsing warm and insistent. She said, "We have to be ready." He nodded, knowing that their arrival would trigger the magistrate's trap, and that both of them would be challenged before their bond could be recognized. Jace's human mind raced through scenarios while Kara's instincts scanned for allies and hidden threats. They would enter a court of law that saw humans as weak and Thurn as inflexible, yet they were stronger together than anyone expected. As they passed the outer docking rings, sensors flared an alarm. The station had detected them, and an automated voice demanded immediate identification. Kara's expression hardened. She said, "We will not be caught unready," and they both moved to prepare defenses in case the magistrate's proxies tried to seize them immediately. Jace checked weapons and shields, and Kara recalibrated the tug's hidden countermeasures. They worked side by side, with no words, the bond pulsing through them stronger with every action, every shared decision, every silent promise to survive together. Then, as they entered the first approach corridor, a group of security drones descended from the station fast, and armed Jace dodged and weaved the tug through narrow gaps while Kara fired precision pulses that disabled the machines without destroying them completely. They could not afford to leave evidence that they were armed more than necessary. The pulses flickered across metal surfaces like lightning caught in water, and Jace felt his pulse match the rhythm of the bond with Kara, guiding him at every turn. The tug shot past the final obstacle and aligned for docking. The station lights reflected in Kara's golden eyes, and she said quietly, "Human, there is no turning back now," he said, "no turning back, only forward together." And as the tug latched to the port, they both knew that the real trial was about to begin. The drift had tested their skills and their courage, but the law in the eyes of the universe would test the strength of their bond. The docking clamps rattled as the tug latched to the neutral station. The corridors of Verith port were wide and metallic, lit with cold blue, light and streaming banners of trade and commerce. Jace and Kara moved through them cautiously. Every eye seemed to follow them, some curious, some hostile. Kara kept her hand lightly on his arm, the bond mark pulsing warm against his skin. She whispered, in her native tongue, that every step they took here would be watched and measured, and he nodded, understanding more than she realized. This was no longer a game of survival. It was a performance of law and courage combined. They entered the chamber of the magistrate, a massive hall carved from alloy and crystal, where humans and aliens alike came to witness disputes and decrees. Kara's presence immediately drew attention, the crowd of Thurn and mixed species murmuring and shifting as the court officials prepared for the hearing. The magistrate appeared a thin, wiry being with elongated limbs and eyes that flickered like memory cores. He addressed Kara first, demanding explanation for the violation of sacred law. She spoke with calm, authority citing the right they had performed and the survival they had shared. He listened impassively, then turned to Jace, the human violator, his tone neutral but sharp, asking if he had tricked the warrior into an invalid bond. Jace swallowed hard and stepped forward, his voice clear and steady. He said, "I did not deceive her. We survived together in fire and drift. Every action we took was shared and necessary for life and honor, and every moment I have respected her as commander and partner." The court shifted at this declaration. Murmurs rippled like waves. Kara's eyes gleamed. She knew the human understood instinctively the weight of their law, and that alone gave him credibility. The rival advocate appeared, a tall Thurn. Male wearing the sigil of the hardliners, he stepped forward with a swagger and a venomous smile, claiming that the human could not possibly understand the sacred rites, and that without witnesses from the clan, the ceremony was invalid. Kara rose, her golden eyes flashing. She countered that the law itself recognizes shared danger as the ultimate witness, and that the human had faced mortal peril beside her in every move, and the pulse of their bond marked it, undeniable. The magistrate tilted, his head considering the argument, and then the room shook violently. Alarms, wailing lights flickering. A pirate strike had arrived and the chamber itself trembled. The rival barked orders to the security forces to leave the human behind as bait. Kara's hands clenched her spear rifle. She shouted, "We will not abandon him." He turned to her and spat the word fool. But she only smiled because she knew the bond meant he would act not because of law, but because of honor. Jace did not hesitate. He vaulted to the nearest control console, venting a corridor, just as the pirates tried to breach the lower docking section, timing the release of air pressure, so the intruders were thrown back harmlessly, while Kara shielded the civilians closest to the hall, with her body moving like a whirlwind of protective force. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the human and warrior acted as one, and for the first time, the magistrate's expression changed from impassive to intrigued. Temporary validation was granted, and both were allowed to remain under supervision until the final trial on Kara's homeworld. Yet even as relief surged, a cold warning ran down Jace's spine. The rival's smile was sharp and calculated. He had won a small victory by forcing them into this visible test, and the final trial would be on his ground. They retreated to a secure chamber, and Kara exhaled a long breath, the bond between them pulsing steady and strong. She said, "This court has witnessed our courage, but not our hearts." And Jace nodded, understanding that law alone was insufficient. He had to prove himself as partner, not just survivor, and the human mind worked through every possibility to keep them both alive in the next stage. Kara shared more of her people's customs and tests, the ordeal of witness and the ceremony of fire. She explained that the final trial would be perilous, requiring trust and timing and respect beyond mere words. Jace listened carefully, storing every fact, calculating every move the drift had taught him, patience and adaptation. But the Court of Knives would demand precise application of those lessons. News of their actions reached the crowd. The pirates were driven off, but whispers of the hardliners' plot filled the air. The magistrate's assistants monitored every step of the human and warrior, their every move analyzed for legitimacy and intent. Kara leaned close and said, "The rival will use any loophole to kill me or erase our bond," and Jace squeezed her hand reassuringly, saying, "Then we close every loophole together." She smiled, a rare light flickering across her face. The tension of the court momentarily lifted as she realized that the bond was no longer just law. It had become shared purpose and strategy. The rival in his corner watched them both, plotting and smiling with the knowledge that the final arena was still his advantage, and yet something shifted in his perception too. The human was no longer a simple pawn. He acted with honor and courage as the Thurn themselves rarely could. Finally, the magistrate called for recess, and both were escorted to private quarters where Kara examined her armor and weapons, while Jace checked ship schematics and survival gear. They spoke quietly about what would come next, the test on the homeworld, the ordeal, and the duel by proxy. Jace noted that human ingenuity and simple machines could sometimes trump ceremonial power, and Kara nodded, realizing she could combine her strength with his practical problem-solving to turn the tide. The bond pulsed between them as they prepared mentally for the challenge ahead. The Court of Knives had tested them only in part, and yet they emerged stronger, more connected, and ready to face the storm of politics, combat, and ritual that awaited on Kara's ocean world. As they looked out at the stars through the tall window of their chamber, the silence between them was not empty. It was full of understanding and unspoken vows. The bond, glowed faintly, and both knew that what had begun as a forced marriage by law had grown into something neither of them could deny, and that the trial ahead would not only measure survival and honor, but the depth of their trust and commitment in a universe that demanded courage at every turn. And Jace realized finally that he would stand beside Kara in every danger, because the bond was no longer just ritual. It was life itself, and the Court of Knives was only the beginning. The shuttle descended through turbulent clouds of iron-rich storms. The ocean world of Kara's birth stretched endlessly below jagged wave cities, rose like towers from a restless sea. The sky glimmered with metallic rain, and flashes of distant lightning illuminated the jagged cliffs that lined the coasts. Jace gripped the seat as turbulence threw the shuttle from side to side. Kara sat beside him, her golden eyes scanning the tempest. She whispered instructions in her tongue, and he followed each word, adjusting thrusters and stabilizers as though the ship were alive, responding to their combined will. Below them, the port city gleamed like a crown on the water waves lapped at massive piers built of alloy and stone and thrummed with the energy of thousands of engines and the presence of warriors moving in tight formation. As they landed, the crowd gathered, immediately curious, and hostile eyes watched from every platform. Kara stepped out, first her body radiating authority and confidence, even though the storms lashed her hair and armor. Jace followed as quietly as he could. Blending human caution with warrior instinct, he could feel the bond pulsing between them, marking them together, before all who watched Kara addressed the council, her voice clear and unwavering. She stated that the bond with the human was complete, not only by law but by shared peril and mutual respect. She recounted the drift, the battles, the pirate attacks, and the proof of loyalty that had saved lives and demonstrated courage in action. The rival from the court in Verith port stepped forward, his expression twisted with both anger and anticipation. He challenged Jace with a sanctioned duel by proxy, a test using war machines and ceremonial combat. Kara's gaze did not waver. She told Jace the test called the Crossing would come first, an ordeal designed to prove that the bond had spirit. It required partners to share breath heat and risk inside a storm tunnel, carved through cliffs and surging waves. The currents inside were treacherous, and only those who trusted completely could survive Jace's human mind. Calculated ropes, anchor points, and emergency procedures. But Kara explained, the ritual was more than survival. It was proof of heart and coordination, and that every misstep could be fatal. They entered the storm tunnel. The wind screamed around them, waves crashing through openings and lightning striking metal conduits. Jace tied knots and secured anchors while Kara led with knowledge of the currents, her hands steady on his shoulders, guiding movement as they climbed and swung through swinging platforms that shifted unpredictably. The air was thick with salt and tension, every pulse of the bond echoing through their bodies. Halfway through the ordeal, a section of the platform collapsed, and a child trapped beneath twisted metal screamed for help. Kara reacted instantly, pulling the child free. While Jace calculated leverage points using simple ropes and human mechanics, they lifted the wreckage just enough to save the child and continued the crossing together, every step, proving to the council and onlookers that survival and courage were meaningless without mutual trust. The rival sneered from the observation platform, declaring the test corrupted, and attempted to exploit every minor error in movement to invalidate their effort. Kara ignored him. She focused entirely on Jace and the task at hand, and together they reached the final platform, the council watching in stunned silence. No sooner had they completed the crossing than the rival escalated the challenge. He activated a massive warframe, a relic of ceremonial combat towering with hydraulic arms and ornate weapons. Jace studied the machine quickly, realizing brute power would not win. Instead, he modified a human-style exosuit he had designed for fieldwork, patches of metal wires and powered hydraulics, giving him flexibility and mobility. Kara swore to act as spotter, guiding his timing with her observations of the rival's movements and of the shifting storm above the Iron Sea. Jace entered the arena. The crowd held its breath. The wind howled, and the rival moved his shrine frame with ceremonial precision. Jace used anchors, harpoons, and carefully timed strikes, his human ingenuity, turning the environment into a weapon, leveraging the storm wind, the wet metal surfaces, and the motion of the tide against the massive frame. Kyra called out timing adjustments, heartbeat counts, and risk cues as they fought not for pride but for survival and honor. In the climax, the shrine frame teetered dangerously over a broken pier. The rival hesitated, expecting Jace to take advantage and destroy him. Kyra shouted for him to pull back and save life over winning instinct. Jace reacted without hesitation, sacrificing the chance for immediate victory to stabilize the frame, saving the rival from a fall into the raging sea. The crowd gasped as the act of mercy became the ultimate proof. Of honor in their eyes, the rival's expression flickered from anger to respect, and the council noted that courage without heart was meaningless, and that trust and mercy bound more than law alone. As the storm began to subside, the rival realized the larger threat had arrived. A hidden pirate fleet jumped into orbit, aiming to seize the world's foundries and resources. Kyra turned immediately to command the defense, her warriors mobilizing with precision, and Jace took the civilian shield line, using cranes and exosuit mobility to rig kinetic barriers. The pirates breached the lower docks, and the tide of battle surged across the Iron Cities. Kyra boarded the pirate flagship with a small team while Jace piloted the tug through fire, providing cover and creating paths of destruction without killing conscript crews. The coordination between human problem-solving and Thurn discipline turned the tide, and the flagship core was neutralized. The attack broke and the council convened once more. The rival stepped forward, swearing fealty to Kyra, and the magistrate read the laws aloud, confirming the bond fully valid. Kyra and Jace had survived trial and danger, proving the bond was no longer forced or ceremonial. It was chosen and earned as they stood together on the highest platform above. The iron sea waves crashed around them. Lightning split the clouds, and Kyra looked at Jace, her golden eyes reflecting storm and calm, and she said, "Our bond is now truly ours." Jace smiled, realizing that the universe had tested them in drift storms, courts, and arenas, and that trust, courage, and love had survived the trial stronger than any law. The arena stretched over the Iron Sea like a vast platform of alloy and stone, waves crashing against pylons below, lightning slicing the dark sky into jagged streaks. Kyra stood beside Jace, her golden eyes steady and commanding the crowd of thousands watching from floating platforms and hovering observation pods fell silent in anticipation of the duel. The rival approached in his massive shrine frame, towering over the arena, arms moving with hydraulic precision, adorned with ceremonial blades and spikes. He looked at Jace with contempt, confident that a human could never match the honor and skill of a Thurn warrior. Jace adjusted the patched exosuit around his body, feeling every servo and wire ready to act in perfect coordination with Kyra, the pulse of their bond thrumming through them, like a living signal connecting instinct to instinct. The horn sounded and the duel began. Jace moved cautiously at first, testing balance and reaction, while Kyra guided him through voice and gesture, calling out timing cues and pointing weaknesses. In the rival's frame, the storm above turned the sky white with blinding flashes, and the wind howled with the fury of the iron seas beneath them. Each strike of the shrine frame sent shudders through the arena, the exosuit groaning but holding, Jace's body steady. He used anchor harpoons to attach to pylons swinging across the platform and redirecting kinetic energy to destabilize the heavy frame. Kyra counted heartbeats and breathed rhythmically with him, allowing timing to be precise. Every motion a dance of survival and trust. The rival lashed out with ceremonial blades, trying to smash through Jace's defenses. The human dodged and countered, using low power bursts to send anchors and cables snapping across the platform strategically, toppling smaller sections of the arena to limit the frame's movement. Jace's mind worked faster than instinct, calculating angles and momentum. Kyra's guidance was perfect. They moved as one, Jace protecting Kyra when she leaned too far to mark vulnerabilities. She responded immediately, covering flanks and calling attention to weak points on the shrine frame. The crowd could see a partnership forged through trials, drift, and law manifesting in motion. Lightning struck the frame, sending sparks across the riveted metal, and a wave surged over the lower platform, threatening to topple the frame. Jace seized the opportunity, maneuvering the exosuit to use the storm energy as leverage. He launched a tether to the frame and swung it slightly. Off balance, Kyra shouted adjustments, timing, and he reacted instinctively, their bond guiding decisions faster than thought. The rival's confidence wavered. noticing that the human relied not on strength but on clever calculation and seamless coordination with the warrior he had underestimated at every step. Jace's movements were human, yet perfectly synchronized with Kara's warrior instincts, a combination the shrine frame could not predict. The climax approached, the rival attempted a final lunge with hydraulic arms aiming to crush the exosuit. But Jace assessed the trajectory and used a final anchor burst to redirect the strike into an empty section of the arena. Kara spotted that the frame was about to fall toward a broken pier below, and she shouted for him to stabilize it. Saving the rival's life, Jace acted immediately, sacrificing the chance for total victory, demonstrating mercy instead of seeking honor alone. The crowd gasped at the sight of the human preserving life against all expectations. Kara watched him, realizing fully that the bond they shared was no longer ceremonial. It was real and essential, built from trust, courage, and choice. As the storm raged and the duel concluded with the shrine frame immobilized, the pirates arrived, jumping from orbit in a fleet intent on seizing the foundries and resources of the world. Kara did not hesitate. She took command, rallying her warriors, while Jace led the civilian defense, improvising kinetic barriers using cranes and tethered exosuit strength. The waves of pirate assault broke against their coordinated defenses. Jace piloted the tug through fire and debris, creating clear paths for Kara to board the pirate flagship. She moved with lethal precision, supported by his timing and positioning, every action reinforced by the trust that had grown between them. The flagship core was destroyed without unnecessary deaths. The pirate conscripts disarmed and routed, and the rival watched his power diminished. Yet he felt a grudging respect for the human whose ingenuity had combined with the warrior's skill to overcome both ritual and brute force. The crowd erupted in cheers. The magistrate, observing the proceedings, noted the proof of true bond and honor stronger than law alone. Kara turned to Jace, her golden eyes reflecting lightning and storm, and said, "Our bond has been tested in every way. Survival, courage, mercy, and trust. You have proven yourself partner in every sense." And Jace nodded, understanding that what began as forced ritual was now choice driven by respect and shared life. As the storm cleared and dawn broke across the Iron Sea, Kara and Jace stood on the highest platform, surveying the calm waves. The bond mark on their wrists pulsed steadily, a rhythm of survival, love, and honor. The rival approached and swore fealty, acknowledging the bond and the choice made in the crucible of duel and storm. The magistrate declared the bond fully valid, fully chosen, and the crowd witnessed the uniting of human ingenuity and stern discipline, a moment that would be remembered across the sector as proof that courage and trust transcended species, ritual, and expectation. Jace looked at Kara and said, "We have survived everything, together from the drift to the court to the storm and duel." She smiled and replied, "Yes. Now we choose each other not because of law, but because we want to stand together through every challenge in every world," and the pulse of the bond confirmed. It's stronger than ever. They walked from the arena side by side, the crowd parting to honor not just a warrior and a human, but the union of courage, trust, and love that had proven itself in every test. The storm behind them, fading into legend. The sun rose over the Iron Sea, casting red and gold light across the towering wave cities. Kara stood at the helm of the highest platform, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. Jace was beside her, gripping the controls of the tug, repurposed as a mobile command rig. The pirate threat had been partially neutralized, but hidden forces remained, their ships lurking in orbit, and the lower docks teeming with armed conscripts. Kara's rival from the duel approached and spoke quietly that if they wanted to save the planet, they would have to join forces. Jace looked at her, waiting, and Kara nodded, a single sharp movement, signaling agreement. Survival and unity would be stronger than pride and revenge. The alliance was tense but effective. Kara took command of the Thurn warriors, rallying them with precise orders, while Jace led the civilian defense corps, improvising kinetic barricades using the foundry cranes and tethered cables, swinging massive containers to crush or divert boarding craft. Every action synchronized. Kara shouted timing cues, and Jace adjusted trajectories in perfect human calculation and Thurn intuition. Together they became a single organism, defending the Iron Cities. The pirates launched a final assault from multiple vectors, and the wind howled with rain and lightning striking metal, as if the heavens themselves were joining the battle. Kara boarded the flagship again, this time with a select team. She moved silently over decks slick with water and machinery, her spear rifle humming with power while Jace piloted the tug, weaving through fire and debris, creating safe corridors and distraction paths, every pulse of the bond guiding them, every movement aligned with trust and instinct. The enemy conscripts were captured or neutralized and the pirate corps destabilized. Kara planted charges while Jace remotely controlled the tug to provide precise counterbalance. The explosion shook the flagship, but no lives were lost. The pirates were broken as a force and the hidden threat dissolved into retreat. As the tide of battle ended, Kara convened her council. The rival stepped forward, swearing fealty, acknowledging that human and warrior had acted with courage and honor beyond ceremonial expectation. The magistrate read aloud the laws, confirming that the bond was fully valid and fully chosen, not by accident or ritual, but by courage, trust, and survival. The crowd watched silently, then erupted. In unified cheer, the humans and Thurn, together witnessing the rare event that two species could create a partnership unbroken by tradition. Misunderstanding or fear, Kara turned to Jace, her golden eyes reflecting waves and storm, and said, "This bond is now truly ours, not for law but for choice, not for survival alone but for life and partnership." Jace took her hands in his human grasp, feeling the steady pulse of their connection stronger than ever. He said, "I never wanted this at first, but now I cannot imagine standing beside anyone else." And she nodded, pressing her hand to his bond mark, both of them feeling the unity and power that had grown between them. They walked together through the recovered docks, the storm clearing behind them, the iron cities alive with movement and rebuilding, the citizens looking at them with admiration and awe. Kara spoke quietly about future plans to unify human technology and Thurn tradition, to create a home for both peoples, a world where courage and ingenuity could thrive. And Jace smiled, imagining ships designed with human pragmatism and Thurn strength working together, exploring stars that neither could have reached alone. Later on the highest tower, they exchanged simple vows, not for law, but for love. Kara said, "I choose you for all battles and calm seas," for Jace. And Jace replied, "I choose you for every storm and every dawn together." The pulse of the bond glowed warmly, a living testament to everything they had endured and survived. Together from the forbidden Med Bay to Drift Lane, storm tunnels, court, and arena, every challenge reinforcing their unity. The rival watched silently, acknowledging that the bond they had forged could not be broken, and the council confirmed it as a new chapter in law and legend. The twin suns began to rise, fully illuminating the iron cities. Jace and Kara looked out across the ocean world, seeing repairs underway, ships returning to docks, and warriors training with renewed purpose. Their partnership, a model of courage, honor, and mutual respect in a universe that often demanded sacrifice. Kara whispered to Jace that they had made history, not because of law or ritual, but because they had chosen each other, and Jace replied, "Yes, because we trusted, and survived and loved together." From the heights, the twin figures looked down at the city and beyond the horizon to drifting stars. Kara laid a hand on Jace's shoulder, and he felt the bond pulse steady and strong, knowing that whatever dangers awaited beyond the iron seas, they would face them as one, together, partners and equals. The story of survival, courage, honor, and chosen love spread across the sector, marking the legend of human ingenuity and Thurn warrior tradition fused in trust and action. And as the waves shimmered in golden light, the two stood united, ready to lead, protect, and explore, knowing that the universe was wide, but no challenge could break the bond they had forged through every firestorm and trial.